This is from the same Jeff from North Carolina. He said, in the early season, with the heat specifically, what is the best way to take care of a deer after getting them down? This is his second year in and a steep learning curve last season, but I've got a good feeling with the work I've been putting in. Hopefully, multiple listener success stories to come. Thanks, guys. So when you kill a deer in the early season, yeah, this is especially relevant down here in the Deep South, where it's not uncommon for it to be 95 degrees on opening week. I mean, it's pretty cut and dried. I'll say you can get away with a little bit more than you'd think, but don't be like loosey-goosey about it. Meaning that, when you get that deer down and you kill the deer, the very first thing you should do is gut it, in my opinion, if you're not packing it out. A lot of times we'll pack our deer out, but even if we're not packing them out, I'll just as soon as I walk up to the deer, I'm dragging it somewhere to gut it pretty much. You don't want to drag it all the way back to the truck, load it in the truck, drive 30 minutes to the nearest deer processor, and then have them gut it for you. Just get it gutted immediately. And if you've got like a long time period before you can take care of that deer, this is what I normally do. Let's say last year on opening day, great example. I killed a doe at like 9 a.m. on opening day. Drag her out, gut her. Don't break her down or anything in the field. Just get the guts out of her. Or wait, no, you broke that deer down. I'm thinking of a different deer. Sorry. I'm thinking of a different deer. Okay, get the guts out of the deer. I load it into the back of the truck, and I couldn't mess with the deer until later that night or the next morning, and it's hot. One thing that I'll do is I'll just go get a bunch of bags of ice, and I'll get like 2 bags of ice, and I'll shove one up in the chest cavity. I'll shove one kind of down where the inner loins are at. I'll shove another one in between the back hams, and then I'll get a towel and put it over the deer and wet it with a hose pipe, and then just pour ice over the entire thing and leave it like that. And I've kept deer good for a while like that. You have to
give us a time. Like, what are you talking about? You said a while.
Like a full day,
okay.
Like a full 24 hours. I've kept one fine like that and ate the thing and everything was good. No meat spoilage at all. You just have to get on it quick. And like I said, don't just drive around with it the whole time. Like I'm going, I'm going straight to the deer and getting the guts out of it. And then when I get out of the woods, I'm going straight to a gas station and getting a bunch of ice. Even if I have to drive 30 minutes or so to get to a processor, I'll still go get ice and just throw ice on the thing. I mean, because a couple bags of ice, it'll cost you like $10 just to ensure that you have zero spoilage out of that deer. What do you have anything else?
Yeah, no, I got a different opinion. I think I'm going to kind of push back against you. I don't like the whole packing full of ice and let it sit there, especially if it's early season or really any point of the year, unless it's like we don't get enough cold weather. Like you're not hanging deer in the South. You see guys in Michigan, in Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin that will shoot a deer in November and it's 25 degrees and they just hang the deer. They gut it, hang it, and let it sit for a day or two and then they break the deer down. You can't do that in the Southeast. It's not possible unless you killed a deer during these really cold fronts and it lasts for like a day and a half, 2 days.
Yeah.
So my thought, especially for like early season, is when you kill it, there's 2 decisions you have to make. Number one, am I taking it to a processor or am I doing it myself? Because some people like to do it themselves. I've done my own deer in the past, just because I didn't like the way a lot of processors process their deer until we met weavers, which do it very different from what I'm used to in the past in a good way. But it's breaking that deer down as fast as possible. Like, yes, you want to gut your deer, but where you're going to have the most meat spoilage is specifically around the large bones in the deer. The femurs and the legs, you're going to have bone spoilage around that. That bone holds so much heat and the muscle holds so much heat. You'll see this, because I've seen this early season. When you go to shoot a deer, if that deer has laid for 2 hours and you go to cut the ham off and everything, if you were to butterfly that ham and split it open, you're going to start seeing like a slight coloring change on the ham up against the bone. And it's going to be like slightly like metallic color, kind of like got this little haze to it, and that's bone spoilage because it stays so hot, and it doesn't take super long for that to happen. It's not a lot of meat you're going to lose in that circumstance, but it's going to be some of the processor you're going to have to trim off in order to keep you from losing that. But where you're going to have the most spoilage is on the hams. You're going to have it a little bit on the back strap, specifically up against the rib cage and the backbone. And the worst 2, other than the hams, is the inner loins. Again, inside the gut cavity and then the neck, if you like neck meat. Now, typically, if you shoot a doe, especially early season, she's not going to have much meat on her neck. Like, I've tried to save meat off, even like a decent-sized doe, like a 90-pound, 100-pound doe. and there's just not a lot of meat on the neck anyways, compared to like a buck kind of later in the season. But like the inner loins, if I kill a deer early season, the first thing I'm trying to get out is the inner loins, if possible. Like I'm trying to get that out, get ice on them as quick as possible, because those will go bad so fast. Like it is unreal, like how hot that cavity is and how quickly they'll deteriorate. But again, if you're going to take it to processor, gut it, pack it full of ice, and get it there as quick as possible. To me, if you got to wait, if it's early season, it's in the 80s plus degree range, I would break that deer down. If you can't get to a processor within a few hours, I would break it down and put it on ice, put it in a cooler. Get you, even if it's a cheap like igloo cooler, go get you like a 7,500 quart igloo cooler for like $80. Stick in your truck. And when you're packing deer meat in there, just cut the hams off. Again, cut your hindquarters off, skin it, cut your hindquarters off, get your front shoulders off, back straps, inner loins. If there's neck meat, get the neck meat. Again, small doses, pretty much there's not much there to grab. But pack it on ice. And when you pack it on ice, specifically, do not leave the drain plug in the cooler. You want the drain plug out of the cooler. You want to pack it full of ice, and you want to have that cooler propped up where the drain plug's aimed down so all the water can rush out, because you don't want your meat just sitting in a bath of ice water. It'll deteriorate the meat as well. And it has a weird flavor profile, texture, all that kind of
Makes
stuff.
Makes it pale.
Yeah, it's not good.
Doesn't look good.
But how you keep that from happening is, again, you unplug your drain plug on your cooler, you prop the cooler up on the back side of it at the one end away from the drain plug, and you let all that water drain off in your truck. Again, if you're in an SUV, kind of tough to do that. You can't really do that unless you have a rack on the back of your truck or the back of your SUV. But like, you just don't want that meat sitting in ice water. But again, just try to get it processed as quick as possible. Like if you're gonna bring it back to your house, stick it. You can leave it in the cooler. I have no issue leaving meat in a cooler for a couple days if I'm going to process it myself. Again, cooler's propped up so the water's all draining out, and packing it full of ice. That's perfectly fine. But if you're going to take it to processor, again, if you can't get there within a couple of hours, I would break it down and then take it to them on ice in the ice chest, and I promise you'll have a lot better quality meat than just letting it sit in your truck.
Yep.
So that's just my thought process.
No, I agree with that. That's definitely the better way to do it, for sure. Also, I would say, too, I'll use my Georgia buck from a couple years ago as an example. The one that I shot opening week in Georgia. I don't remember how hot it was, but it was very hot.
It was hot.
In that case, like we're hunting a WMA and we're kind of far out. We dragged the deer out. It took a couple hours to recover the deer, getting everybody together, like with the cameras and everything. Got the deer. The track, we talked about it the other day. It was stressful, but it didn't take long, but it was stressful. Mm-hmm. Not much blood. But he only went like 75 yards. Got him out relatively quickly. And then at the front of the WMA, they had their little skin and post thing. One thing that I like to do, even if it's really, really hot outside, is, like you said, I was going to break him down immediately. And even if you have a cooler, but you don't have any ice yet, I like to cool that meat down before I put it in a cooler. Like maybe you have a big contractor bag, you're going to throw all the meat in, whatever the case may be, to keep it dry in the cooler. I like to keep game bags around, even if I'm not, like on that hunt, we're not packing deer out because you can't get more than like 200 yards from a road on that place. So we were going to drag our deer out, but I still brought game bags for this exact reason. When I hoisted that deer up and I started cutting him up, you take the hams, you take the back straps, and you put them in game bags, and you just hang them up in a tree in the shade. Even when it's, upper 80s, low 90s that day, I think is what it was. You hang it up in the shade and just get a slight breeze on it. It'll cool that meat down very quickly. Not get it cold. It's not like ice, but it'll just get the heat off of that meat. So when you throw it all in a contractor bag and then put it in a cooler, and then you got to go drive to go get ice, that meat's not... You're not sitting a bunch of hot meat on itself, and it's going to insulate itself, because the worst thing is, like, even when you get a cooler and you got ice and everything, you got like all that meat in some plastic bags or even in separate bags, but it's all sitting there against each other. The same thing you're talking about with the bone spoilage. Even when you put ice on top of it, the very center of all that meat where there's no ice or anything is insulated, and it stays warm, and it'll stay warm for a long time.
Stay hot.
Yeah, it'll stay hot for a long time. So you need to, in my opinion, go get some game bags. You don't have to get real nice ones. I would recommend getting nice ones because you can use them over and over and over again. But get something like that where you can just hang that meat up in a tree, and just that little bit of breeze and letting it hang there for a couple minutes. Like when you grab it, you'll be surprised at how cold it is.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I would recommend as well. Even if you're not packing your deer out, that's just something super, super handy to have around.
Yep. Also one other, this quick tip on that. When it comes to a cooler for deer meat, oversized is always better than just big enough.
Yeah,
Remember that when
definitely.
it comes to meat. You want as much ice on that meat as physically possible. Like I've got a 65 quart cooler. If I bone out a deer and put it in there, it's just big enough for in ice. It's not big enough. Like I need to get like a cheaper 100 quart cooler would be fantastic to have in the back of the truck. And if you're not using the cooler, like if you're on a hunting trip, you just pack gear in there. Like use it as like a gear tote storage. But if you kill something, pull all that stuff out where you have plenty of space and you get 6-8 bags of ice on it. Just because, again, you want as much ice as physically possible to cool that meat down as quick as possible. Because if you just put all that meat in like that 65 quart cooler and it's boned out, it's in there, I can get probably 2, maybe 2.5 bags of ice in there. That's not enough. Like it doesn't cool it as quick as it was. If it was a bigger cooler, there was more space in, I can get the meat spread apart like in the different bags, and I can get way more ice on there to chill a lot faster. Like that will tremendously help you have higher quality meat by having an oversized cooler. Again, if you go to Walmart, get you an oversized 75 to 100 quart igloo cooler. Probably spend, I don't know what they are now, maybe $100, something like that for one of the cheaper ones, because I'm not looking at it for long-term storage. I just need something big enough to hold ice, to keep it cool, where I can get a bunch of ice on that deer as quick as possible.
Yeah, and by the way, like you're the one that taught me how to do that, and that dramatically changed. It made it so much easier to keep really high quality meat for an extended period of time when you just can't. Either you don't have the time to process it yourself, or you don't have time to get to a processor. You know, especially Weavers for us is 2 hours from where we live, and it's worth the drive to go up there. But I can't just like drop everything and just drive up there when I shoot a deer. Like it usually takes me a couple days to free myself up and go. And the cooler thing, I've struggled with coolers in the past about, you put ice in there and then you got to drain it. The whole thing of packing it, leaving the drain plug open and tilting it up. I mean, I wish that I knew the exact amount of time, but we have kept meat like that for 8+ days.
Oh yeah, I've
before.
done it over
Easy.
a week, easy.
Yeah, I mean 8+ days, no problem.
Well, and
just keep putting ice in it.
Well, when I used to process my own deer meat, I would do it for a week plus in that same circumstance and have it propped open and again the drain plug open and just let it drain, and it'll do really, really good, especially if you don't have the storage like in an extra refrigerator to put all the meat in, because most people don't have a second refrigerator. Maybe they got an old beer fridge down in the garage or something, which can work out great, hanging quarters. And you did that one time, I think, when you were at school in Auburn. You had a whole quarter just sitting in your freezer.
I dry aged it for 21 days.
Yeah.
I flipped it every like 2 or 3 days, and then we smoked it for 24 hours.
Good. Pretty good.
It was good.
But yeah, that's I'm very passionate about the whole meat preservation aspect and taking the utmost care of it, because again, it's just a better end product you're gonna get on the way back. So yeah, oversized cooler, tons of ice, get it chilled as quick as possible. Also, one other thing, just because we're on this little rant and I'm passionate about it, if you're gonna hold it for an extended period of time, I like to completely debone the meat.
Yeah.
I don't want the ham. I don't want that femur in the actual quarter itself. Same thing with the shanks. I cut the shanks, cut the meat off the shanks, unless you're going to want to keep them whole to potentially cook, but you can cook them without the bone on there. And it cools off even faster. Because again, that bone, the femur bone specifically, will hold so much heat. It is unreal. Like it is unreal. So if you can get that out too, if you're going to hold it for, especially if you're going to hold it for like a day plus, it'll help cool the meat down a lot quicker.
Yeah, and just look up how to debone. Like if you haven't done it before, look up how to debone a back ham on a deer. It takes 2 seconds.
That video, I just got to fix it.
Yeah.
It's be ready to roll.
Okay, yeah.
We got a video on YouTube. We've been holding on for a year now almost.
Yeah.
That will drop. That will be probably one of the most extensive breakdowns for deboning a deer, because I think that was deboned. It wasn't. I remember it was quartered. Was it quartered or deboned? I can't remember.
I don't remember. I think we quartered it.
We'll do another one because we were supposed to do another one of caping a buck out, and ended up the one buck I thought I was going to mount and ended up deciding not to mount the thing. So we do a video on it, but we'll do that again this year as well, kind of showcasing how you do all this stuff in the field. But anyway.
That'll be so. Yeah, it's very, very easy to do, and you can fillet off all of the meat on the entire back ham in one piece, so you don't have to break it down.
I had to show Andrew that, Mister. He was cutting it up into chunks.
Yeah, cutting out the sirloin.
It's so easy to do it with one knife swipe and just take the whole ham off one piece. It's so much nicer.